Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. Some Muslims say that voting is wrong, that participating in a political system outside of Islamic countries is un-Islamic. Here to dispel those claims is Dr. Shabir Ally. Dr. Shabir, how would you respond to someone who says voting is haram, voting is wrong?
Well, it's an extreme claim, and the claim is built on the idea that there should be a perfect Islamic system, and Muslims should work towards advancing such a system, and that system should be all over the world. And Muslims should live within that system. So if you happen to be outside of that system, let's say you visited a non-Muslim country, it should be for a very specified purpose. You should finish your objective and return back to your homeland where the Islamic system is in play. So those who hold those extreme views will probably also say that it's not legitimate for Muslims to live in places like Canada, the United States of America, Australia, and so on, because to them the system is basically a non-Islamic system. And
but there are some people who live here but also think that voting is wrong.
Yes. In which case they have got it. They're living in two dual modes of thought. So one, a mode of thought that allows them to live here, but then on the other hand, the mode of thought that doesn't allow them to participate in the system. But by living here, you're already part of the system, whether you like it
you're paying taxes
or not. Yes, and of course there are some people who might be in between, in that they live here, but they don't consider this their permanent abode. They think, at least theoretically, that they should live somewhere else, and they're just maybe trying to earn a living in the meantime, make a savings, put together a savings that will allow them eventually to migrate. And many who have that way of thinking do not actually succeed in these plans. Very few do. A lot sometimes try to migrate away with their family, especially when they realize that their kids are growing up, their kids are becoming part of the culture and civilization here. They don't like that too much. They try to migrate away with their kids back to a majority Muslim population, but there they find that they don't actually fit in for one reason or another. They come back to Canada. We've seen this happen again and again, and then they resume life in Canada as their permanent abode. So what this experience, especially this latter experience, shows is that we are here and we are very much part of the landscape, whether we like it or not. It's not only the matter of making the best of it, but theoretically, there is no reason why Muslims cannot live in a country such as this one. And many Muslims who live here will find that many of the principles that Canada stands for are actually Islamic principles of fairness, justice, treating everyone equal and giving everyone equal rights, protecting the rights of minorities, and so on. All of these are Islamic principles. And some people even went to the extent of saying that though they lived in a Muslim majority country all their lives, it is only when they moved to the West that they actually now finally saw Islam. Because what they saw in the fair dealings of people in the West is to them characteristic of Islam, but they hadn't actually seen it in the Muslim majority populations. I'm not saying that all Muslim majority populations are all bad, but this is a sentiment that some Muslims have expressed. So there's a lot of good in the West. There's a lot of good in modern secular democracies. Modern secular democracies are set up largely out of the growing experience in developing countries where we have a mixture of people from a wide variety of religions and backgrounds. And the way of being fair to everyone is through a system of democracy where everyone has the chance to rise to various levels of government. Everyone has the fair and equal chance to all of the resources and facilities in the country. Whereas if you have a religious sort of a theocracy, then the people who belong to that religion, which is identified as the state religion, will find themselves more privileged than others. Others will find themselves to be somewhat underprivileged in that their religion is not represented at the state level. Some other religion is. But if no religion at all is represented at the state level, then everyone feels equal in in that we have the full freedom to establish our temples, our gurdwaras, our mosques, our churches, and in the public sphere, we're all equal players regardless of religion.
So, on that note, how would you respond if someone says, well, our political system is corrupt, the liberal democracy, it's disloyal to God? How would you respond to that?
Well, the alternative would be to have a theocracy in which God rules, and we've seen the disadvantage with that in a modern state in which we have a mixture of people. If everyone, obviously, in a state are of one religion, then they would see no difficulty with this. They would rule according to the principles of the one religion that they all hold dear, whether it be Christianity or Buddhism or some other religion. But where we have this mixture, what is the leveling playing field for everyone? It is the democratic system. So that system works very well. And in fact, we should cherish it where it is working well. And being part of that system is the way of ensuring the continued fairness and justice for all people. So registering as a voter, voting, even running for elections within such a process is not to support corruption, but actually to support the goodness that comes out of these systems. And yes, if one is so sure that what I'm doing is supporting corruption, well, then we'll say, no, don't support what in your good conscience is corruption. But if you can see the goodness that is there in the modern democratic systems, then naturally you should become part of the system and vote within that system as well.
What about if, for example, some of the issues that are being discussed don't seem like Islamic issues, or on the other hand, if no leader seems like they could be the ideal leader for a Muslim voter? What would you recommend that Muslims do in that case?
There is a principle in our religion of picking the lesser of two evils. So the Quran speaks a lot about enjoining what is right and forbidding what is wrong. But we know that there are limitations to that. Sometimes you can't, you see something being done wrong in your face, but you don't have the power to change that. So you have to live with it. But you change as much as you can. So sometimes changing as much as you can entails picking the lesser of two evils. You champion something, though it is not entirely ideal, but it is better than the alternative, because the alternative is worse or more evil. It is mentioned in a prophetic saying that a time will come when the good people will be the ones who say to the adulterers, don't do it in the middle of the street, do it on the side. So you're not able to stop it entirely, and you can't, if you say to them, don't do it at all, then your words will be of no avail. So at least you can lessen the evil by saying, do it on the side of the road rather than middle of the road. So there will be some things that we have to put up with, because we cannot change those. And there's an interesting prayer that's good for a coffee mug that says, God, give me the courage to change what I can, the patience to live with what I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two. So sometimes we need to have the wisdom to know the difference between what we can change and what we cannot change. Some things we cannot change. We have to accept it as it is. But what we can change, we have the responsibility as a civic duty and also as a religious duty to change that, even with our one little vote.
Do you think that Muslims should vote for a Muslim candidate, or that a Muslim should care about certain Muslim issues?
Not necessarily. When we live in a modern secular democracy, we have to look for the fairness and justice of all people. What naturally will happen is that if you have a Muslim candidate, the Muslim candidate probably will understand Muslim needs and Muslim issues a little bit better, whereas somebody else may misunderstand Muslim communities and Muslim needs, and sometimes we might sense some discrimination. Sometimes we hear about a call against immigration and so on. And we know that all of these will affect Muslims, apart from affecting other people as well, but perhaps sometimes the hammer drops more heavily on Muslims. So we should weigh the candidates based on their platforms, so what good they will bring to the nation as a whole, what good they will bring to Muslims in particular, but the overall consideration should be what they will bring to the country as a whole, because this is our country. We want it to be the best that it could be, and if it is the best that it could be, it'll be the best that it could be for us as well.
So October 21, Muslims should go out and vote.
Yes, and if we had more time, we would mention more precedent from the prophetic example, from the Quran, to justify, the idea that Muslims can and should vote.
Well, sure, go ahead. We do have time.
Well, there is in the Quran the story of the Prophet Joseph. The Prophet Joseph actually lived under a system that was not an Islamic system. He lived under a king in Egypt. But when the land was faced with famine, he said to the king, "Ijalni ala khazain al-ard," place me to supervise the storehouses of the nation, because I have some expertise in that. So here he was, being part of a non-Muslim system, as a Muslim himself, the Prophet Joseph, known from the book of Genesis in the Bible, and chapter 12 of the glorious Quran. But he's becoming part of that system to do what good he could for the nation. He had to be part of the system in order to be able to do that. And eventually he rose to power within that system, so that he could, as the Quran says, يَتَبَوَّأُ فِي الْأَرْضِ حَيْثُ يَشَاءُ. He could go about in the land wherever and how he pleased. So sometimes to bring about good, you have to be part of that system, to use that system to bring about the greatest good that is possible. In the prophetic example, we have it that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, prior to his being delegated as a prophet from God, he was known to be a peacemaker. When the Kaaba was being rebuilt and there was a dispute over which tribe will have the privilege of placing the stone in its proper place, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said to them, okay, bring a sheet, place the stone in the sheet, and then they all lifted the sheet a corner each, so that the Prophet eventually placed that stone in its proper place. And so peace was met by his intervention. So it wasn't an Islamic system, and it wasn't even a system, but he forged and cooperated to forge a minor moment of a system of sorts there to bring peace between people. Now, prior to his prophethood as well, it is mentioned that the people of Mecca drew up a covenant which is referred to as Hilful Fudul, the covenant of generosity or of kindness or of nobility. And that was to give protection to travelers in case travelers come into that territory. They should be treated with kindness. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was a partner to that treaty. And it is said that later on he reflected and said that if I were to be called to be part of a treaty like that again, I would rally to that call. So that shows that even though he's a prophet of God now, with his own mandate of what to do as under God's guidance, he would cooperate with non-Muslims in getting together for the common good. And the Quran says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Cooperate with each other in piety and good things, but do not cooperate in sin and in transgression.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Shabir Ally.
You're welcome.